Hello. So I have a question about the dates. You mentioned that we're going to start counting the Omer, blah blah. I've never cared about the dates. I just get a calendar and follow that, and whatever. But when I've looked at before I actually was in a congregation and I looked at when you should keep these feasts, I look in Deuteronomy 16, and it says, count off 7 weeks from the time you begin to put the sickle to the standing grain. So, and then start counting. So the way I viewed it at that time, of course, we're not in an agricultural society.
Right.
But that it just seems like people kind of split hairs on dates a lot in this thing, and it just seems to me like the day that you would put the sickle to the standing grain, it's going to change every year. That's why, I mean, depending on the when it gets planted,
that's
what the
true.
weather is, what
that.
part of the country it is, and I just kind of, I don't want there to be any kind of division. I've heard somebody like get a little annoyed that you were keeping a different or breaking off from the other calendar.
Who was it? Point
I'm
them
not.
out. Show me.
There wasn't anybody in the congregation. It was somebody who watches you online, but
I'm
still.
just playing.
But I just kind of wanted your comment on that. Like, I don't think it should matter. And
well, I'm not going to say that.
Except
I'm not going to say it doesn't matter. You know, I'm going to say though that we're all trying to figure this out.
Okay, because you're going to put the sickle to the grain different in Tennessee than say
in Australia.
Or Australia,
yeah.
For sure.
Of course, this, we read it earlier. The particular command about the first fruits is one that is, technically speaking, when you come into the land. And so we understand that in relation to being in the land, we're really in exile.
Right.
So we are kind of doing the best we know how.
Okay.
We're trying to figure all these things out. And so there are these calendar issues, and there are people who believe it, you need to do things like this way, and this is the beginning of the month, and there are others who say you need to do it this way. This is what's been established, and for unity's sake, we need to stay on the same calendar. And for all of those different arguments, most of them have merit, and there's reasons like you listen to this one camp and you say, yeah, I get that. I understand it. I see that. And then you turn to the other camp and you listen to them. Oh, yeah, I get that too. Yeah, sure. So you can go back and forth forever listening to all these different views, but at some point you have to make a decision, okay, this is how we're going to do it. Which is why I went to a little bit of detail today to explain why, as a congregation, we're going to do it this way. Hopefully to preclude the division and the strife and all those kinds of things, which is why I added to that an understanding and a respect for those who may see it differently than I do as far as counting the Omer, all right? Because it is going to vary, and people have different opinions about these things. Right. So I am bound and determined, with the Father's help, not to allow it to be a source of contention and division. That we understand we are going to see certain things differently, and each person should be able to follow out and walk out their conscience and their conviction on things like this without me judging them, and vice versa. So, until we go into the kingdom, and we're in the land, and the King Messiah has sat us all down to straighten us all out, because he's the final arbiter, he's the final authority on all of this. And when he says this is the way we're going to do it, I'm going to get in line. I'm going to step in line with what he says. Until then, we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to, do the best we know how. I have no doubt that along the way, technically speaking, we're going to do things the wrong way, the wrong time, what have you. But I'm choosing to believe that the Father looks beyond the technical shortcomings, and he sees the heart of a people who are trying their best in exile to figure out how we do this. I'm just going to believe that he's going to honor the person who observes Shavuot on the 6th day of Sivan with a heart that wants to please him, just as much as he's going to receive from us, those who would honor him on
week later.
On that, yeah, about a week
Yeah.
later. That's right.
Right.
You know, now let me say this, because I know that I have said before, you know, we, for the most part, we follow the Hillel calendar, and I do believe that there is something to be said for unity's sake, and I still believe that. But, you know, this is one of those places that I do deviate from that particular calendar, and that's why I tried to explain as best I knew how, why I'm doing it. Not to bring division, but to try to walk it out the best we know how, okay? But I don't want to give the impression it doesn't matter, because it does. But what matters more is that when you and I don't see things eye to eye, that we can still go forward, you know, as long as we're agreeing on the fundamentals. You know, the Yeshua is the Messiah, the Son of the living God. There's one God, and he's given us instructions. And sometimes he is, and this is my view, sometimes he is vague about how we do these things, and I kind of believe he does that on purpose. Let's see what they do with this one. Not to create contention, but to provoke us to walk together in the unity of the faith. All right? All right.
Well, the reason I had mentioned it, because I think it's important to have unity for sure, but more so because we're not in small communities where we know, you know, it used to be we weren't streaming when they started keeping the Feast of Weeks. We weren't streaming, and we weren't watching the evening news or looking up Google, when is it happening this year? But I do think for unity's sake, it's nice to have unity, but also mercy and grace.
Well, sometimes we have unity, but not uniformity.
Right, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yes, ma'am.